The Mayan calendar is the most accurate calendar ever discovered on Earth. And humanity is intrigued how an ancient tribal people could be so precise, more precise than modern man and all of his technologies. Now humanity is looking to the Maya to understand this date of December 21st, 2012, that is emphasized within the Mayan calendar. And the Maya have responded. What higher source that is more respected than the president of the National Mayan Council of Elders of Guatemala, all 440 Mayan tribes representing this primary leader of the Mayan nation in Mexico, Belize, and Honduras, and Guatemala. His name is Don Alejandro Cerrillo Perez. Today, I will translate into the language of the modern world what the Mayan people themselves have to say about 2012. And if I err, I'm sure the Mayan Council will let both of us know, but they did give me authority to speak. The Maya wish to inform you that the world that you know, that you live within, is not what you think it is. We modern people think that the world is solid and real, and that nothing can change it. It is fixed and will go on for eternity without or without our presence. The Maya wish to inform you that this is not true. The world is really images that can be controlled by consciousness, especially consciousness that is connected directly into the human heart. This is not a normal public broadcast. If you're looking for that, you've come to the wrong place. You are about to enter into a way of being that is only understood by the ancient world. The modern world has almost no idea of what we are about to discuss, and generally, it doesn't even know that it exists. And yet, this way of being is exactly what you, the modern world, need at this moment in history, but you probably don't know it. Humanity is very much in the situation of a butterfly moments before it comes out of its cocoon. Everything it knew is about to change, and a completely new world is about to emerge. Hello, my name is Drunvalo Melchizedek, and you're probably wondering why a white man is standing here authorized to speak for the Mayans. Well, that's going to take a little bit to explain. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to tell you a little bit about my life. And in doing that, I think you'll understand why I'm standing here. Like most people on Earth, when I was young and in my 20s, and sometimes people a lot earlier, want to know why they're here on Earth and what life is all about. And what is this planet and stars and suns? Why are we here? What is really going on? Well, I became so intrigued with this that I began to study, and my first place of study was in college. I went into college and I chose physics and mathematics. Not because I wanted to become a physicist or make money. That wasn't the purpose. I thought that the physicists and the mathematicians must know what the stars and planets are. And I went for years and years studying this until I finally came to the conclusion that they don't know any more about this than I do. I then switched from the left brain to the right brain and began to study art and art history and painting. And I spent another 2 years studying that, and it really helped. I went through 20,000 years of art history, from caveman to modern time, and slowly I began to get an inkling through the female side of the brain of what life was about, but I wasn't even getting close. Time went on, and during this time, while I was going to college, I decided also to go into begin to study meditation. And I did this through beginning with the Hindus. I began to study mantras, and I had a Hindu guru who began to teach me these things, and I became very serious about it. And I sat down and began to study this. Well, one day, while I was deeply in meditation, a phenomena took place in the room where I was. Something I did not expect. I did not ask for it to happen. It just happened. these two spheres of light, roughly this big, two of them came in together, came right up to me on both sides here, about this far away. They were brilliantly bright. One was a beautiful ultraviolet color. The other one was a very bright green color. I didn't know what it was. Two balls of light standing there in my room. And then inside my head, telepathically, I heard these words, we are not separate from you. We are you on another level of existence. I didn't know what it meant, but it began an inquiry into existence that they began to lead through my life. And in my interaction with the two spheres of light, I was led by them to over 70 spiritual teachers around the world and studied almost every form of spiritual meditation on the planet. But at the same time, the two spheres of light guided me into the indigenous world to begin the understanding of their ancient ways. Then the angels, at one point, or the spheres of light, they are actually angels from their point of view, began to lead me into the indigenous world. And this is where the Mayans come in. They led me to a tribe in New Mexico called the Taos Pueblo. And I spent 14 years with them. One of their teachers there is a man named Tellus Good Morning. He's now passed on. He was the head of the Peyote Church for the entire United States. And he took me on and began to teach me. And other members of the Taos Pueblo began to also teach me. One was the actual cacique, or what is called a cacique, which is the spiritual leader of the Taos tribe. And he used to be the chief of the Taos Pueblo. And he taught me about crystals and about fetishes and how you could understand and change the outer reality through the use of crystals and fetishes. A fetish is a stone that you carve into a shape, and if you know how to use it, you can actually change your life in ways that no one would ever believe. But I saw it. I watched it happen. I couldn't deny it. And slowly, they gave me, after 14 years, I had an indigenous training that changed me in ways that prepared me for going out into the world to begin to work with other tribes. The spheres of light then led me into what were called the Anasazi. They were the ancient ones that lived before the Hopi and the Sioux and the Lakota and the Cheyenne and all these other tribes. They were much older. And I found them on other dimensional worlds and began to work with them for a period of time. And then I was led to the Maya. And in 1985, I was directed to go into the Yucatan and to begin to study there and to do ceremony there. I was led into sacred temples such as Uxmal and Labna and Coba and Chichen Itza and Tulum and Cajunlich and Palenque, and even into Guatemala to Tikal. And it was initiation for me. And the Maya watched as I began to work on this level. And slowly after that, a few years later, I met a man named Hunzbatzman, who is a Mayan shaman and Mayan priest, and who is connected with the Grand Itza Mayan Council out of the Yucatan. And he began to teach me the Mayan way of perceiving the world, which was different than the tribes that I was used to in the United States. And he asked me to begin to do ceremony with him. And for many years, we did ceremony with hundreds of tribes from all over South America that came in. And then in about 2003, the Hunzbatzman asked me to come in, and we began to do ceremony in ways that was much, much deeper, involving tribes from all over the world at this point, and where I began to understand their ceremonies and what this meant, because I didn't really understand what ceremony meant at that point. It wasn't until just recently, until 2007, that the actual president of the entire Mayan nation came to me, and we'll speak about that in just a little while. We know that human consciousness is evolving. Science has recorded this evolution over long periods of time and is very aware of it. The Encyclopedia Britannica, it discovered something recently, and I think it was in about the late 80s when this happened. They discovered that if you took all the knowledge that all of humanity had learned since the beginning of our civilization, which is the Sumerians, about 6,000 years ago, and you took everything they learned all the way up into the year 1900, that there were so many bits of information, thinking in terms of computers, there were so many bits of information that we had learned. It was a very large amount of time, 6,000 years. And so we slowly begin to evolve and learn a lot of things. And then the encyclopedia discovered that from the year 1900 to 1950, we learned as many things as we did in the last 6,000 years. That's incredible. In 50 years, we learned as much as we did in 6,000 years. Who would have ever guessed that? And then they discovered that these are approximate dates, they're not precise, that from about 1950 to about 1970, we learned as much as we did in 6,000 years again, instead of 50 years and only 20 years. And then from 1970 to about 1980, we learned again how much we learned in 6,000 years. And it kept speeding up to about 1986 or so. We doubled it again, and it kept going on. And now, in fact, there was a time with NASA when the information was flooding in so fast that they couldn't even put it into their computers. They were about 8 or 9 years behind being able to even get it in. They had to wait until the hardware and the software caught up to their ability to learn. At this point, we are on a straight up curve. We are learning as much as we learned. I don't know the exact time, but approximately in 1 month, we are learning as much as we have learned in 6,000 years. This seems impossible, but it's fact if you check it out. And so it means that there's a curve. We were slowly evolving, getting smarter and smarter and smarter, and all of a sudden, as we're approaching modern time, we started going up, and it's a straight up curve right now. What the Mayans say is that we are about to go through a consciousness change, a change of great, I don't even know how to put this in human terms, but it is, we are about to become something brand new, a new species, a new way of perceiving the reality. And that's really what this show is about, is this change in consciousness. Sure, we're going to talk about a lot of other things, but this is what is underneath all of this. When we look back at the ancient cultures, it becomes clear that we humans are now very different than we were, say, 2,000 years ago. That's pretty obvious. Not just our modern techno toys, but different in how we perceive the very reality around us, what we think the reality is, and who we think we are within this. The Mayans say, however, that human consciousness evolution is timed to the cycles of time, similar to how DNA unfolds as it reaches certain chromosomes, and that we are now at this moment approaching a narrow point in time when human evolution speeds up tremendously and makes a jump into a new level of awareness. We become something greater than what is now called human. It is within this understanding that we will return to explain what the Mayan have to say about what we are about to become. And it is within this understanding that we will constantly be referring when we speak about human consciousness changing. So just understand that, because I'm going to keep talking about it. We can't really proceed to understand what the Maya have to say about their prophecy without understanding of how the ancient world perceives ceremony. This is another level of it. We are actually linked together in the Mayan mind. Ceremony to the ancient world was far more than what we in the modern world understand or even begin to grasp. We think that science and logic is the way of this new world we live within. We definitely believe that we are superior to what has come before us and that technology will eventually make our lives better and more worthwhile. But if you think that technology is going to save you from what Mother Earth is about to bring to humanity, and if the Maya are correct, then you're in for a hard surprise. Like we said in the beginning, life is not what you think it is. And the Sanskrit Vedas, written over 6,000 years ago, it speaks about this time we now live within. It talks about how we learn about electricity and magnetism, and that how we learn to fly in the sky with metal boxes. That's actually a quote. And then on a single day, the Vedas say, we give it all up. Much like a child as it grows older, it lets go of its teddy bear and reaches for a higher vision. We're about to do the same thing. From the Mayan point of view, high technology is not a sign of an advanced civilization. It is a sign of a civilization about to be advanced. What good is technology to a people if they discover that the human body and human consciousness is capable of doing everything that technology is now doing and far, far more? This is what we are about to understand according to the Maya. First of all, the Maya people see and know the earth as a living being and conscious of everything that is occurring on her body. And further, the Maya see that everything in the heavens are living beings that interact with each other. We don't. We just see the earth as a rock. Ceremony is direct communication and a living bond with Great Spirit, Mother Earth, Father Sky, and all life everywhere. From the ancient world, it is understood that before any change in the human world can take place on earth, a ceremony has to be performed first. Ceremony is what links our hearts and the hearts of the earth and the heart of the sun and the heart of the universe and everything and everyone that exists. When the ancient world enters into ceremony, they enter into a sacred world of eternal possibilities. The Maya have predicted that as we approach 2012, humanity will enter into chaos on a very deep level. But you will have no reason for fear. It is not the end, it is the beginning, as you'll soon understand. Is it the end of the cycle of time? Is it the beginning of a new cycle with great beauty and hope? This is what we have to find out. But if we focus on the end of this cycle, as we look back around us, we see that everything in modern times right now are beginning to degenerate and break apart on vast and primal levels, exactly as the Maya had predicted. For example, global warming and the world's environment rapidly approaching a probable ice age that would eliminate most life on Earth. This is a big deal. The world financial system on the verge of total collapse, which we are all struggling with all over around the world. Disease on a global scale, such as AIDS and the H5 virus and many other deadly diseases threatening world pandemics. And about 46 wars globally occurring at this very moment, not just Iraq and Iran, Iraq and Afghanistan. There are other wars going on all over the world. And over 2 billion people living on less than $2 a day, with 25,000 children starving to death each and every day we live. And a human population expanding to the point of destroying all life on Earth simply by us existing. I could go on, but your heart knows of what I'm speaking about. The times we live within are precarious, to say the least, for our dear planet and for all life that lives upon her. According to the Maya, all of this chaos was predicted long ago, for we are approaching the end of a very long cycle of time. And when this cycle ends, this chaos always happens. It's part of the cycle of life. It is natural. But the Maya predict that this chaos we are now experiencing is just beginning, that something much greater than anything we are now experiencing is about to appear on earth. And please understand, the prophecies that are about to be revealed are not just fantasies predicted by the Mayan calendar. For what I'm about to disclose from the Maya is backed up by hardcore modern science, as we will soon show. Once you understand the situation that we are all in, it's time we all listen to what is coming and prepare inwardly. It is not a time to continue to live as though everything is normal, for it is not. And normal, as we now know it, if the Maya are correct, is never going to return again in our lifetime ever. But what replaces the normal reality is far, far greater. So is it the end of modern civilization that so many people believe to be true from the study of the Mayan calendar, which predicts massive global earth changes in 2012? This is exactly what the head of the Mayan nation, Don Alejandro, wants you to understand. Yes, there probably will be earth changes according to the Maya, but there is something else far more important, extremely beautiful and positive, that no one is talking about and most of science is unaware of, and it is this other positive aspect that the Mayans and I want you to be aware of. If this end of this cycle is a human disaster or a blessing for all of humanity, it will depend on humankind, as it was explained to me by not only the Maya, but many other tribes. At a time like this one, where obviously a page in history is being turned and civilization is in crisis, everything depends upon how humanity assimilates all of its known experience, knowledge, and wisdom into a body of awareness that leads humanity into the future. If this future experience is sustainable, then we survive. If it isn't, then we go the way of the dinosaurs and become extinct. It's up to us. We have the power to change our future now. In fact, the here and now is the only place and time possible to make this change. We spoke about this higher consciousness that the Mayans spoke about, and there is a very important understanding or secret, really, to how the trigger that makes this work. And I could put this into a sentence, but the sentence isn't understood by most people when I say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, and then I'll come back and explain it more in just a moment. But the secret to how this leap in consciousness is acquired, it has to do with this, that human consciousness, combining the awareness of the ancient world with the awareness of the modern world, creates a new and more evolved human consciousness for both worlds. This is, simply put, we live in two worlds that are separate from each other, the ancient world and the modern world, and we live side by side. But at the same time, these two worlds need each other. They need to understand each other and to absorb each other's knowledge and their wisdom, or neither of these two worlds will be able to move upwards into a higher consciousness. It requires cooperation. The ancient world is ready to move now. Most of the tribes of the entire world, they're completely in place. But the modern world has still not understood the need for its ancestors, which is the ancient world. Why are our ancestors important to our survival? And further, why is our survival important to our ancestors? In this modern world, most of us live in a synthetic reality. And by synthetic, I mean this: separate from nature in our houses and our cars, with technology shielding us from the outside world and the perils of nature. And because of our pride of technological achievements, we can't imagine why an indigenous person with his or her feet in the dirt and barely able to feed themselves could possibly have any kind of effect upon this modern world, except as an annoyance. So let me explain why the Mayan and other tribes are so important to humanity for our very existence. And if you allow this understanding to birth within yourself, then we will go on into the hidden world of the Mayan people, where they will begin to reveal their way of life and their wisdom. Looking into nature and the universe, we see that the human body and all known life forms, including planets and suns and all of their relationship of the outer reality, contain a mathematical series of numbers called the Fibonacci sequence. Our human body actually contains these numbers in billions of places, for every cell contains them, not to mention the vast majority of our body proportions do also. Now, to understand exactly why the ancient world is crucial for the modern world to combine with, to combine our knowledge, our wisdom, and everything together, I'm going to talk about sacred geometry. I'm going to use that to be able to explain to you why this is so. Well, the golden mean is a proportion. You can take any line, no matter how long it is, and cut it in a magical place, which makes the golden mean. One part of it will be 1, if you measured that, and the other part will be 1.6180339, which is a number that goes on for infinity. It never ends. And so it's a proportion. And you can see this proportion not only in planets and stars and suns and moons, you can see it in your own body. If you take your hand, for example, and you look at your joints, of your bones, if you divide this length into this length right here, the phi ratio appears, 1.6180339. If you then take that bone and divide into this bone, the phi ratio appears again, and this bone into this bone. You can do it through all of your hand. You can do it through your feet. If you take this hand here and measure that length by your arm bone, there's the golden mean. If you take this one by this one, the golden mean appears again. If you take your foot and divide it by this one, keeps going. Throughout your body, you're going to find the golden mean in literally billions of places, because every single cell in your body has the golden mean in it. And so obviously, the golden mean is very important to creation. It's probably one of the most important proportions of all the other possibilities of mathematics that there are. But life, you and me, we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to make the golden mean. In fact, I don't believe the golden mean exists anywhere in the universe anywhere. It's only this idea, this ideal proportion, but it doesn't actually exist anywhere. Life doesn't know how to use numbers that never end. It knows how to use whole numbers like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. It knows how to use those, but it doesn't know how to use this other one. And so life figured out this amazing thing, which the Fibonacci, this man, discovered a long time ago. And that is that if you look at this series of numbers, Fibonacci is a series. It begins out with 0, and then it goes to 1, then 1 again, then 2, then 3, then 5, then 8, then 13, then 21, then 34, then 55, then 89, and 144. It goes on. And this is the sequence here that continues forever. And if you look at it, all it is you add 1 to 1, you get 2. You add 1 and 2, and you get 3. You add 2 and 3, and you get 5. You add 3 and 5, and you get 8. It's pretty simple. You just add the last number to the middle number, and you get the next number. But if you divide these numbers, if you divide 1 into 1, you get 1, and this number is under this golden mean proportion. If you divide 1 into 2, you get 2, which is over the number, but it's closer to the actual number. Then when you divide 2 into 3, you get 1.5, which is closer to this, but it's under. And then when you divide 3 into 5, you get 1.666667, which is over. And if you watch this, it goes under, then over, then under, then over, then under, and over. And the number keeps getting closer and closer and closer to the golden mean. By the time you get 34 into 55, 1.6176 is getting very close. Now if I could see the nautilus shell image. This is a nautilus shell. It's been cut in half. And what's happening here, these chambers at first are kind of broken and very strange because this is 1, then 2, then 3, then 5, then 8, then 13, 21, 34, 55, 89. These are unfolding, and it says as they get higher, they get closer and closer and closer and closer to this perfect golden mean. You can see it taking place right before your eyes in this shell. And this is what life does in order to get around the fact that it can't use these complex numbers, but it can use single-digit numbers only, like 1 and 2 and 3. And life uses this not only in your bodies, not in everything, and everything alive on earth. I don't care what it is. I don't care where it came from. Even if it was from another world, this is what it uses to unfold this. Okay, remember what we're talking about here is why does the ancient world and the modern world need each other in order to survive what the Mayan people are talking about. This plant actually can finally come to the place where I can explain this. This is called a Sneezeworth plant. It's a strange plant, but it actually grows according to the Fibonacci sequence. When it comes out of the ground, it grows 1 leaf, then 1 more, then it grows 2 leaves, then 5, then 8 leaves, and then 13 flowers. The Fibonacci sequence is obvious. My question to you is, how does this plant know when it's sitting at 5 to grow 8 leaves next? Why not 10 or 12 or some other number? How does it know that? The way it knows that is because the plant looks back at its past, which is 3, and it knows that when it adds its past to its present, it knows where the future is. It knows exactly that the number is 8. And this is the situation that humanity is in right now. It's like we are the modern world is like 5 right now, and it doesn't know where it's going. It's completely disconnected from its past. And when it reconnects with its past, which is what's about to happen on Earth, when it does reconnect with its past, it then remembers the ancient world. And when it adds the ancient world to the modern world, it knows exactly where it's supposed to go. We have to know where our consciousness is going to expand to. And we can't know that without the ancient world. It's essential. It's not an option. We have to. And the ancient world is completely prepared. They're ready. They know they need us. But we just don't know we need them. The Mayan people have held a knowledge about time, eternal time, and especially the date of December 21st, 2012, that has become a mystery that our modern hearts have longed for more understanding of our own existence. We know this date is important, but most of us don't know what it truly means. So to help bring this date of 2012 to a brighter light so you can understand the bigger picture, we will have to speak about other subjects such as the precession of the equinox and other cycles of time. We will explain these concepts at the right time as they are all interlocked together. If the Maya prophecies are right, and modern science confirms their prophecies, they actually do, what is about to happen is no short of world-changing, with the immediate future about to unfold into no less than a complete transformation of the planet and human consciousness. Anyone out there that cares? The Mayan hope so. As the world academics has studied the Mayan knowledge in their calendar, it has mostly come to the conclusion that 2012 is the year of the great doomsday for humanity. But when fully open to view from the living Mayan perspective, it would be more accurate to call it the birth of a new humanity, or even more clear, the birth of a new consciousness. But this part of the prophecy has been completely overlooked by most of the world. And rather than writing a sequel to The Serpent of Light, this internet program is my way of getting this information out there as soon as possible. A book takes many months to write, then another 9 to 12 months to have it published, and then yet another year to a year and a half to get it out into the world's languages. It's way too slow. This reaches you now. Though who knows? I may write a sequel anyway. Now, in this chapter, we will begin by stating again that the Mayan calendar is the most accurate calendar on Earth. This extreme accuracy has astonished scientists around the world, and partly because of this accuracy, hundreds of millions of people are looking to the Mayan elders to explain this date of 2012 that the world considers to be part of the Mayan prophecy. And further, what we have heard around the world is that on this date of December 21st, 2012, there will be world cataclysms and the world will end. Just so you understand the source of what I'm about to say, I will quickly explain the National Mayan Council of Elders of Guatemala and who they are. There are 440 tribes living in Mexico, Belize, Honduras, and Guatemala, and each of these tribes has one elected elder for that tribe. These 440 elders make up the Mayan Council of Elders centered in Guatemala. Then this council elects one member of the council to preside over the whole council and the Mayan nation, and this is Don Alejandro Cerrillo. He is a 13th generation Mayan shaman. Don Alejandro knows more about the Mayan people and culture than probably anyone on Earth. To be clear, there are other Mayan councils, such as the Grand Itza Mayan Council that I talked about before, associated with Huntsvatsman, also a Mayan priest and shaman, but living in Mexico and in the lowlands. This council is another primary council, but represents mostly the Mexican Maya. I have worked with and performed ceremony with this council also for many years, which I talked about before, and the work that they do is also very important for the world. And then there are smaller councils that are located all around in Belize and Honduras and other places that are mostly regional and meet the needs of people who are usually more remote. To begin to explain what I have been speaking of, I will now begin a story that the Maya gave to me to give to you. It moves like a river, turning and changing direction, but always heading to the ocean. It will begin to narrow the gap between the way the ancient world understands and the modern world interprets the sun and the earth and the universe. If you can view what I am saying from your heart and not your mind, you will understand. In July of 2007, Don Alejandro and his wife Elizabeth came to Sedona, Arizona, where I live, to meet with me. They wanted to tell me about some of the Mayan prophecies and to ask for assistance in these prophecies. Why me? Well, I can't really tell you, except that, like I said, I've been working with them for a long time, and I think they trust me. The first thing that Don Alejandro told me was that everything we have read, heard, or seen about the Mayan culture and the Mayan calendar was not approved or written by the Mayan people or any of the councils, and therefore not spoken by the Mayan people. What we have learned from the Mayans has come from the universities and governments and religions and archaeologists and ordinary people like Jose Aguilas, and some of who are Mayan. But to be very clear, the National Mayan Council of Elders of Guatemala, according to Don Alejandro, has not said one word in 527 years. That's a very long time of silence. So you can see why the Maya breaking their silence at this time should be of great importance to the world. And further, everything that we now know about the Maya has to be put aside so we can hear the truth, not a truth made up by outsiders who are simply guessing or are living a consciousness that has almost nothing to do with the Maya. Here's what Don Alejandro told me about the Mayan prophecy of 2012. First of all, he said there is a window of time around this date, December 21st, 2012, the Mayan call the end of time. It is about 7 or 8 years in duration. This window began, as I understand it, on October 24th, 2007. But I have not been told the exact date it would end. But for certain, at this moment, we are all now living in this window called the end of time. Don Alejandro also said that the likelihood that the Mayan prophecy would begin on that date of December 21st, 2012, as most people in the world believe, is extremely unlikely. He simply said it would begin somewhere in the window of the end of time, which means any minute from now, and could begin as late as 2015. This is something that none of the prophecies that the modern world is talking about is saying. And further, to grasp the situation, we have to understand what the date of December 21st, 2012 actually is. And to do that, we must begin by talking about the precession of the equinoxes. For some of you, the Maya are using a cycle of approximately 5,200 years. And if you multiply this number by 5, it equals 26,000 years. And this is the approximate length of the precession of the equinoxes. And the actual cycle that the Mayans are using of 5,200 years is not that number either. It's slightly less. And so on this calendar, there are wheels within wheels taking place here. And all these wheels seem to be moving at different speeds. One of these is the precession of the equinoxes, which we'll explain in detail in a minute. And it comes back around approximately every 26,000 years. These 52,000 year periods are 5 times on here where they don't meet the precession whatsoever, but once every approximately 26,000 years, those two cycles come into perfect alignment. And that's what's happening on December 21st, 2012. So let's take a closer look at time. So we can see how this bigger picture emerges, and we can see what the precession of the equinoxes is within this larger picture. Time is an elusive human concept. We look at our watch and say, well, it's 4:32. But most of us forget that this time is connected to the rotation of the earth, a real thing, not a digital mind thing. We look at the sunrise or the sunset, and we think the sun is moving. But really, this motion is an illusion also, as it is still only the rotation of the earth that is causing this illusion. The same movement that creates our everyday time. The earth spins one full revolution, and we experience a single day. This single cycle is divided into 24 segments, which we call hours. Of course we know this. Everyone knows a day is one revolution of the earth. The second best known Earth cycle is the journey that the Earth makes around the sun. One cycle around the sun is 1 year, or 365.25 days. Some scientists say it's 365.44 days. And so it is clear that we count time by the movement of the Earth relative to the sun. But there are other movements and cycles within and connected to the Earth that are understood a lot less by most people on Earth, but have as much effect on our everyday lives as the hours we record with our watches. We just don't know it. For example, the angle the Earth's axis is tilted to the sun has an enormous effect upon every human on Earth, which is at this moment about 23.5 degrees, and is called the Earth's obliquity. This angle to the sun creates our seasons, our summer, our spring, fall, winter, and it is constantly changing. The axial tilt of the Earth changes from 22.1 degrees to 24.5 degrees over an approximately a 42,000 year period. Now this is a really long period, and you wouldn't think that it had anything to do with everyday life. But even with this long cycle, astronomers, for example, must take into account this changing tilt of the Earth's axis on a daily basis as they explore the universe with their computerized telescopes. If they don't, they will not be looking at what they think they are supposed to be looking at. They'll end up looking at somewhere else. And even our journey around the sun is not as simple as it seems. The orbital shape, called the eccentricity, is also constantly changing. Our Earth moves from a near-perfect circle around the sun to an ellipse over time, caused mostly by the gravitational influence of Jupiter and Saturn. This cycle is changing over a very long period of time, about 100,000 years, and interesting enough, it does not change the length of the year as it moves from a circle to an ellipse and back again. And then there is the precession of the equinox, a wobble in the axis of the Earth that has been recently calculated by science in the year 2000 to be exactly 25,771.5 years for the axis to make one complete rotation. Now, if you look at this here, what we're talking about is this is the axis, and it's moving in a wobble. It's moving in a circle. It's not a perfect circle. It's actually a little bit more of an ellipse rather than a circle. And for that to go from one time around, one wobble, takes almost 26,000 years. The cause of this wobble are primarily from the sun and the moon, though other bodies do affect it. The precession of the equinox is also always changing because of something called the Milankovitch cycles. The Milankovitch cycles are the summation of all the Earth cycles and all other cycles that affect the Earth cycles, which appears to be constantly changing. The scientific focus of the Milankovitch cycles has been mostly to study the effects they have on the Earth's climate. Yes, to study the Earth's climate, one has to know the Milankovitch cycles, as well as the sun's solar cycles, another paramount subject on Earth's climate. And then, of course, there is the orbit of the moon, which causes the tidal evolution and, like a clock, determines the high and low tides of our oceans, something that affects every person who moves upon the surface of the oceans, but which affects the Milankovitch cycles as well. These cycles also affect human emotions and millions of biological cycles of all life on Earth, such as the female menstruation patterns. These cycles are the key to everything that we are talking about and to all prophecies of the Mayan people. And so now we can see that there are many cycles within the movements of the Earth, and the precession of the equinox is simply one of them that is influenced by all the other cycles. There are others, but you get the image. If we were to look at the end of this little tip up here, like I said, it forms an elliptical pattern. And to blow that up, we would see that there are 2 points that are the most distant points from the center of the circle, which are called the apogee and the perigee. You can hardly say it. And these 2 points will become more and more important as we progress. According to science, in the year 2000, like I said, it takes the Earth 25,771.5 years to make one complete circle. And as it does, it moves through all 12 signs of the zodiac. So this axis actually points to different zodiacal signs as it moves through there. And according to the ancient Hindus and the Tibetans, each time the axis of the Earth moves into a new sign, humanity completely changes in a very specific way. It's a little more complicated than what I'm saying, since the Hindus break up the periods of time in this ellipse into what are called yugas, and they are a little different than the astrological signs themselves. So on December 21st, 2012, the axis of the Earth begins to point into the sign of Aquarius. And according to the ancient world, we begin to rapidly change our consciousness. And according to the Maya, this consciousness change actually begins not necessarily on that specific day, but somewhere within the end of time window, which we are now within. Now let's look at this date of October 24th, 2007, that began the end of time. What was special about this date? There is another indigenous tribe in the United States called the Hopi. The academia believes that this tribe came across the Bering Strait from Russia over to Alaska and then walked down the coast of Canada and eventually migrated to where they are now in northern Arizona. But according to Grandfather Eric, a member of the Hopi Council and the historian for the tribe, he's actually the last living member of this particular part of the tribe, that this is not true. The Hopi did not come in that way. They came from Guatemala. And at that time, when they left from Guatemala, they were Mayan, not Hopi. And the Mayans sent them forth north for reasons that are still hidden by the Maya and the Hopi. But the fact that the Hopi were originally Maya was acknowledged before me by both tribes. I actually sat and listened to them as they told me this whole thing. And in November of 2007, Grandfather Eric and I were riding in a bus in Guatemala, sitting beside each other and talking. And Grandfather Eric asked me if I saw the blue sphere in the sky on October 24th, 2007. I told him I didn't actually see it, but that my daughter saw it and watched it as it happened. I told him I saw it on the internet, but I didn't see it. He said, could this be the blue star prophecy that was prophesied over 200 years ago by our tribe? You know, I didn't know the answer to that. I wasn't Hopi. But here's what happened. Just before October 24th, 2007, a comet named Holmes came into our solar system, a very small, fast-moving comet. No scientist thought too much of this cosmic event. It wasn't a big deal. But then on October 24th, 2007, this comet exploded and rapidly became a huge blue sphere in the sky, expanding and expanding until it became larger than the sun. It is now recorded as the largest object ever observed in our solar system. And so as I understand it, when Grandfather Eric arrived back home in Hopi land, the Hopi Council met and it was agreed upon that this blue sphere was the blue sphere prophecy of the Hopi. It was rapidly accepted all over the North and South America, and it was also accepted by the Maya as the beginning of the end of time. So this is how this came about, this period of end of time. It wasn't just a random event or some little thing. It was one of the biggest events that ever have occurred in our solar system that we know of ever. There is a second part of this Hopi prophecy with the coming of a red star. The Maya and the Hopi will not discuss this with me, though I know there's been written about in books, but I'm not going to talk about that. But I feel confident that they will in the future. Now, when Don Alejandro was in Sedona, Arizona in July of 2007, he gave part of the Mayan prophecy, one item. And there are many, many more. And he said that, what he said, and this is Mayan prophecy, definitely. He said that there would be a physical pole shift of the Earth's axis sometime within the end of time. Now, this is nothing new. Since Edgar Cayce gave this same prophecy long ago in the 1930s or so, perhaps I should simply say that they agree. And Cayce said that sometime after the winter of 1998, the axis of the Earth would shift to a new location, and he even gave the exact location of where he predicted the axis would move to a very specific point inside of Russia, approximately 16 degrees from where it is now. Considering that Edgar Cayce gave about 12,000 predictions from 1920s to 1970 and was only wrong on one small prediction, he gave a reading while he was in the United States on a man in France and reached his twin brother by mistake. Edgar Cayce's predictions are among the most accurate in the world. And modern science has been intensely watching this possibility of a pole shift. A physical pole shift always begins with a magnetic pole shift first. And science has noted that the magnetic field of the Earth has begun to weaken about 2,000 years ago. And then about 500 years ago, there was a dramatic shift in the strength of the magnetic field as it became weaker and weaker. Then about 40 years ago or so, the magnetic field began to change in ways where the magnetic lines that had been more or less fixed for a long, long time began to wander. This resulted in the whales that used these lines to migrate began to beach themselves on land, something we'd never seen before. The magnetic lines changed from their established positions, and some of them now entered into land masses which never had before. No one had ever seen whales this before, and no one had ever seen the magnetic lines change like this before either. Then the birds began to show up in locations that were not part of their migration patterns. Again, because the Earth's magnetic lines were changing. And they were changing because the Earth's magnetic field was getting weaker and weaker. In the 1990s, the astronomical maps of the world, the aeronautical maps of the world used for landing airplanes at the airports had to be changed worldwide because of the old ones were simply not valid anymore. And today the magnetic lines are so unreliable, the magnetic maps have to be checked every single time a plane lands to make sure that their guidance systems are functioning properly. In 2003, a television special came out of NOVA, which gave a team of scientists the airtime to begin to talk about the possibility of a magnetic pole shift. These scientists felt that Earth's magnetic poles will shift sometime in the near future and that it was imminent. And then a little less than 2 years ago, the world scientists who observed the Earth's magnetic fields went onto the internet to warn the world. They were given 11 days before the government shut them down and wouldn't let them keep talking, probably because they were afraid that people would be too concerned. What the scientists said was that there were so many anomalies in the Earth's magnetic field that they believed that within 24